a lot of
Why is it
the
glowing?
pelvic area of a cadaver, and including external genitalia. So you see there. Now, some of these things can be shown in those other specimens as well. Well, we're all adults here. You should be able to look at this without getting terribly disturbed. So what do we have here?
The lips.
Labia majora of the vulva. Okay, labia majora. And then what is this cavity in here? The urogenital sinus. The labia border a cavity called the urogenital sinus because both the urethra and the vagina open into it. So both a urinary structure, the urethra, and the vagina, a reproductive structure, a genital structure open into it. So it's called the urogenital sinus.
Can you turn it this way so I can see?
Yeah. There's the labia majora, and the cavity in here is the urogenital sinus. Now, earlier in embryology, that this sinus is the sinus is larger, and actually this opens into it as well, but then this becomes isolated from this cavity. What's that opening?
Anus.
Yeah, the anus. So our antecedents in evolution had a structure called the cloaca, which reptiles still have today. And the cloaca is a chamber into which the anus, their genital ducts, and their urinary ducts all open to one common chamber. And the birds, which are surviving dinosaurs, which evolved out of the reptilian stock, also have that as well. But as mammals develop further in embryology, the anus becomes separated from this cavity. So what's left of the cloaca is a cavity into which just the vagina and the urethra open. That's called the urogenital sinus. Okay. Now, what is that aperture over there?
Can't see.
This cavity right there.
Vaginal canal.
Yeah, that is the vaginal orifice over there. So here's the in there is the lumen of the vagina. Okay. And then directly in front of that, because anterior is this way, it's toward me. There's an opening over here. And what is that opening? Now, I can't probe it with this one without tearing it. Yeah, the urethral meatus. It's anterior to the vaginal orifice.
Can I see that again?
Yeah, about over here. And I will look for it with magnification, and I may be able to insert a finer probe in it, but this is too coarse because it'll tear the opening. So I can ask it by indirection. I can ask the vaginal orifice and then ask you to identify an opening found there, anterior to it. You have to know that's the urethral meatus. Okay? So you should know this area. I'm going to ask some questions on this. Down now here, this is the pubic symphysis. Right over there. There's the disc. I cut closer. I retain more of the left pubic bone, but not as much as the right pubic bone. But right there you can see this different color, you see, is where the disc is in the pubic symphysis. Okay. So that means in front of that, as an anterior to it, which is here, you have this mass of fat which raises an elevation, in front of the pubic symphysis. And this is called the mons pubis. This region is called the mons pubis. That is, this is called the mons pubis. And that's an elevation produced by the fact that female genetics call for differential deposition of fat there. Okay? And what do we have here?
Pubic hair.
Yeah, pubic hair. That's right. That's pubic hair. That's what that is.
Red.
Now, look at this. So here's the pubic symphysis. Now then, posterior to that, we have this, and then posterior to that, we have this. So what might this be? That's the bladder. That's right. And then what is that? That's a uterus. Okay, and the natural position for the uterus is here. You know, it's sitting right on top of the bladder. It's resting on top of the bladder like this. It doesn't stand up like this. It sits on top of the bladder like that. So what is the architectural significance of what I just said? You need more restrooms for women in public buildings than for men. Now, why is that?
No pressure?
Yeah, you have the uterus sitting on top of the bladder, so the bladder can't expand as much. That's the answer. So, in the past, they put in, half the restrooms for men and half for women, so that produces, no lines or anything like that at the men's restrooms, but frequently after an event or something like that, at a stadium, there may be a line 3/4 of a mile long of women waiting to get in, and there was no line in front of the men's rooms.
Don't guys also have bigger bladders? Like slightly larger?
Well, they can distend more.
Oh.
Yeah, because there's no uterus to
Okay.
get in the way. Okay. So of course, restroom is a euphemism because people don't go into it to rest. And bathroom is a euphemism because if you walked into one of them, you saw a person actually taking a bath in a toilet, or the urinal. Because in all bathtubs, you'd have to wash your feet in the toilet bowl. Or in the men's room, you could do it in the urinals. That would be startling.
That's what Carlos does.
So we should get this one.
So it could be called the EEDF, the Excreta and Egesta Disposal Facility.
We're gonna change that.
Yes, we could change it to
We're gonna make it-
EEDF, the Excreta and Egesta Disposal
Then I'll never
Facility.
find the bathroom.
Micturation, defecation.
So, that's right. So, in the future, you may hear people saying during a test, "Can I step out to go to the EEDF for just a moment?" Okay, so then you should know the regions of the uterus, which I'm not likely to ask in this one. They show better on these separate specimens where I removed the uterus. But some things can be seen here. So I'm going to point out as much as can be seen here on this one. And then we're going to go to these. And first of all, note this.
I'm getting tired.
Here, let's just move this for a moment. Okay, before we do this, let's just identify this. What might this be? This is a portion of the sigmoid colon, which, now that's dorsal or posterior to the uterus, you see. And then it's going to the rectum, which leads to the anus. And then, what are those?
Those look like either diverticula or haustra.
They're not haustra. They're not really diverticula. They're epiploic appendages, which I mentioned when we were looking at the cadaver, the other cadaver material. What are epiploic appendages? You should know this. I can show them on the current cadaver in residence, and also on those separate visceral masses. Some of them show these as well. In the wall of the large intestine, there are masses of adipose cells. Now, if you have a low percentage of body fat, they stay histological only. So they can only be seen in histological sections. However, as people gain more fat and the adipose cell vacuoles fill up with triglyceride molecules, the mass starts to become macroscopic, and then it bulges through the wall of the large intestine and projects, like leaves sticking off the sides of the large intestine. And that's what these are.
What do they call
These are masses of fat called epiploic appendages.
Epiploic?
Yeah, EPIPLOIC. That's the anglicized version. In the international terminology, it's appendices epiploici. Or in the anglicized version, it's epiploic appendages, which I mention in Bio 8 also. However, I don't show this in Bio 8. I just show diagrams. So you should be able to identify the epiploic appendages by name and know what they are, for a Part B, for instance. So this, if you see these, it indicates that the specimen from which this came was an obese individual, or a very heavily, substantially overweight person and possibly obese, which means that since there's a lot of obesity now, that possibly even the majority of the U.S. population has these. Before the last election, I got mailings, from all the political parties. And they showed me pictures of all the candidates. They were all, at minimum, substantially overweight, and the majority were obese. Both Democratic, Republican, Tea Party,